By our worship as we have lifted up our songs of praise to God and as we gathered around the Lord's table, as we've just been fellowshipping with one another, happy to see each and every one of you here this morning. You might recall that back a while when I began this series of lessons called The Highway to Heaven, I introduced to you a road. It's a road that was one of the first practical roads that crossed the plains of our nation, connecting Chicago, Illinois, eventually with Los Angeles, California. It has gone by a number of different kinds of names. Some have called it the Main Street of America. Others have called it America's Highway. Some call it Will Rogers Memorial Highway. For those of you in Oklahoma, automatically you kind of begin to think what this road is. Of course, I'm talking about Route 66. Arguably, probably one of the most popular roads, probably one of the most well-known roads in our country today, though it's somewhat dilapidated. It's become dilapidated because of the number of roads that crisscross our nation from west coast to east coast, and as a result of that, Highway 66 or Route 66 is not used as much. Last night, as I was sitting in my living room and kind of working on the lesson and so forth, Lori's mom was there, and Lori's mom, of course, is 92 years old, and we asked her, are you familiar with Route 66? And she goes, of course I am. You get your kicks at Route 66 and so forth. So, okay, so it even goes back to those times and those eras as well. So Route 66 is an incredible road in and of itself. Route 66 was a road that really caused a lot of freedom in our country, and it almost became a cultural phenomenon. It was a cultural phenomenon because of, metaphorically, the things that it did. It gave birth to many stories. It was a place that nurtured dreams and hopes for people, especially during the Great Depression in the 1930s. In its heyday, it was a well-traveled road. And in the 30s and 40s, through the Great Depression, people began to move from the east, moving towards west, especially in Oklahoma. The result of that was, back in 1939, John Steinbeck, he wrote this book telling the story of these Oklahoma people who had moved, from the Dust Bowls to California looking for a better hope and a better life. So Steinbeck wrote this book, The Grapes of Wrath, to tell their story. And he dubbed America's Road another name. And the name that he gave her was the Mother Road. Maybe you got to think, well, why in the world would he call it the Mother Road? Well, it was called the Mother Road simply because of this. She gave birth to new dreams and a brighter future. Of all the people probably that were depressed during the Great Depression, who maybe was hit as hard as anyone, it had to be the state of Oklahoma. The result was that many of the poor families lost their farms and because of the dust storms and so forth, and had to move out west to find a better way of life. In many ways, when you think about the Mother Road, mothers are all about giving birth, not just physically speaking, but giving birth to the dreams and to the dreams and a bright future for their children. And so this morning is Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day. This morning we're going to be talking about you. For some time now, I haven't really, on Mother's Day, I generally will say a few things about Mother's Day, but the day I decided, well, maybe it's time for me to preach another Mother's Day sermon. Generally, Mother's Day sermon gets me in trouble, so that's why I tend to shy away from them just a little bit. But before I start, let me digress for just a moment. You recall, as I began this series on A Highway to Heaven, I asked you a question. The question was, what is the longest road in the world? And in that period of time, we talked about a number of the longest roads that really are in the world in terms of miles and so forth. But then I said to you, the longest road in the world in terms of destination is the road that really begins right where you are sitting this morning and continues throughout the entirety of your life, and it ends eventually in one of two destinations in eternity. Let me pose you a second road or a second question, and that is, what is the oldest road in the world? Well, there are those who say that the oldest road in the world is a stone-paved road that dates back to 4000 BC, and it's located in Ur in the Middle East. But guess what? It's not the oldest road in the world. Really, the oldest road in the world dates back to Eve, who is the mother of all humanity, and that road is called the Mother Road. This morning, I'm going to be talking about that. I believe when it comes down to the Mother Road, it probably is the most valuable of all roads. I think it's probably second only to the road to salvation, but in terms of the Mother Road, it's one that continues up to this very day itself. And it impacts almost all humanity in one way or another. And so this morning I'm going to share with you several reasons why I believe that the mother road really is a valuable road. But let's start by talking about a little boy who his mother had went to a supermarket, and they're shopping and so forth, and the little boy and his mother, they get separated for one another. Or after a while, the little boy, knowing that he is separated from his mother, he starts to worry a lot. He starts to frantically yell out these words, "Martha! Martha! Martha!" And of course, that's his mother's name, and her mother hears her name. She also recognizes the voice of her little son, so she runs and she finds him, she grabs him, and she hugs him and reassures him that she has found him and so forth. And then she puts him out at arm's distance, and she says to him, "But sweetie, you don't call me Martha. I am mother to you." And he says to her, "Yes, I know, but the store is full of a lot of mothers." Well, that's really true, isn't it? Our world is full of a lot of mothers. But there's one mother that is especially special to us, and that's the one who gave us birth. That's the one who raised us. That's the one who taught us. That's the one who disciplined us. That's the one who was the example of how to live life and to go about life. So the question might be asked this morning is how do you know when you become a mom? Other than just giving birth to a child, how do you know that you become a mom? Well, I was reading about this, and one says you know that you're a mom when you automatically double knot every tie that you make. You know that you're a mom if you find yourself humming Mickey Mouse's Clubhouse or Paw Patrol while you're going about your duties during the day. Or maybe you hear a baby cry in the grocery store and you automatically find yourself swaying back and forth, even though you don't have small children anymore and the children you have are either in school or they're long gone. You might be a mom when you actually like the smell of strained carrots mixed with applesauce. Or you might be a mom if you're looking for your sunglasses and you can't find them how hard you're looking, and your teenage daughter says to him, "Well, Mom, maybe you ought to check the ones that you've pushed up on your forehead." Or you might be a mom if you've gone out for a romantic dinner with your husband and you're enjoying real adult conversation, where the next thing you know you find yourself reaching over and cutting up his steak for him. That's how you know if you are a mom. Well, Mother's Day is a great day. What more can you say about Mother's Day? Well, everything that you deserve are the things that should be said to you. And so Proverbs, the 31st chapter that Dave read to us a few moments ago, is a great section of Scripture. There it says, "Who can find a virtuous woman? Her price is far above fine jewels or rubies." I think the last time I did Proverbs 31, that's when I think I got myself into trouble. And so whenever I mention Proverbs 31, all the ladies go, "Not her again." But I just can't think of a better example of what womanhood really is about, or about what being a wife is about, or what being a mother is about, than this virtuous woman that is found here in Proverbs 31. And so what are the reasons for the mother road being so valuable? Well, here's number one. Her work is so invaluable when you think about all the things that a mother does. Well, what are mothers? Mothers are a lot of things. Someone said this, that they are women who have truly, hit the mother load. But not in terms of but in terms of really a load that is there for mothers to handle and to carry. When you talk about mothers and their work, mothers are teachers, mothers are disciplinarians, mothers are cleaning ladies, some of them are gardeners and mowers of lawn, mothers are nurses and doctors and psychiatrists and counselors, they are chauffeurs, they're coaches. Mothers are developers of personalities, molders of vocabularies, shapers of attitudes. Mothers are those who use soft voices to reassure their children that they are loved no matter what. Mothers are a link to God. They are their first impression of what God really is about. Those things are all found from a mother. James Dobson was one time recalling a time when his wife was watching his youngest baby at home. His name was Ryan. She's been watching Ryan. Ryan has been extremely sick. He has been crying all day long. During one period of the morning, his wife Shirley is changing Ryan's diaper, if you will, and then the phone rings, and before she buttons up the diaper and so forth, she turns around and reaches to the phone, and about that time Ryan has an attack of diarrhea, and it goes everywhere. Well, she cleans up the mess, puts new clothes on the little boy and some sweet smelling clothes. She picks him up, carries him into the living room, She feeds him. She puts him on her shoulder to burp him, and he throws up all over himself, throws up all over her, throws up all over the couch too. About that time, Dr. Dobson, he comes into the house, and he said that he could smell the sense of motherhood everywhere. And his wife, Shirley, said to him, "Was all this in my contract?" Mothers, I think about those kinds of things and all the things that you go through as mothers. Being a parent, in my estimation, is not easy. It's not easy. Sometimes you're filled with so much joy about your child and pride for them that your buttons are just popping. At other times, there's a sadness that is there, that there's not enough tissue to dry up your tears because of your concern for your child. I can remember or understand the feelings of a mother with 3 children who was asked this question, if you had it to do over again, would you have children? And she said, yes, but not the same ones. And so motherhood is really like that. If there's anyone today who thinks that a mother's work is not worth far above rubies, well, they haven't been a mother or spent a day at being a mother. Being a mother is hard work, and that's why we honor mothers on this day. Mothers are valuable, so valuable. In Proverbs 31, you might recall these words that Dave read to you just a few minutes ago. She sews, she shops, she cooks, she gardens. Of course, some mothers sew. Today, mothers, if you're sewing, in the early days, for my children anyway, when we were living on a very limited income and so forth, Lori did a lot of sewing and made a lot of clothes for our children. Of course, as we got a little bit older and maybe started making a little bit more money, then she doesn't sew so much as that in terms of clothing and so forth, because today, we take our children to some department store and we buy them clothes and so forth. When you talk about shopping or bringing food from afar, well, in those days she may have had to travel a great distance in order to go to a market. Today our mothers would go to an Albertsons or a Fred Meyer's or a Winco or a Walmart or something like that, and they would buy their food there. But nevertheless, someone has to go there and to purchase the food, and food that is not only delicious, but food that is also good and healthy for you. She cooks. She provides food for her family. This next one says this, that she gets up while it's still dark to prepare food. Her lamp does not go out, and that she watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness, which means that she's not a lazy woman whatsoever. You say, well, that's just not me. Well, you probably don't get up in the early in the morning to prepare food, because in that day they had to go out and gather wood because they had wood fires. If there was to be water, it had to be gone and drawn from a well somewhere. So it was not maybe as comfortable or as easy as it is for you today, because you have gas ovens and electric ovens, and you have water faucets that are in your house and light switches, and that makes it so much easier. But it doesn't mean that the work does not have to get done. She watches over the affairs of her household. I don't know of any mother that doesn't do those kinds of things. So a mother's work is really a lot of hard work. Someone said this: a man's work is from sun to sun. A mother's work is never done. Can I get an amen from the mothers? That's so true, isn't it? I mean, as guys, we go to work and we might go pretty early in the morning and we'll put in 8 hours or maybe 12 hours or a few more hours than that. But if you are a mother, then that begins really early in the morning. And when you were single, maybe the normal hour was maybe 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, but the new hour for a mother begins at like maybe 5:30 in the morning when their children wake up and so forth. And your day begins there, and it goes all the way till you put them down at night for bedtime. That's if they're not sick and all the things that goes around that. And then you got to take care of the biggest baby of all, and that's your husband. So the work of a mother is never done. So the mother road is valuable, in my estimation, because of the work that she does. A mother's work is endless in nature. Here's the second reason. I think that a mother's teaching is invaluable. They are their first teachers. Life doesn't come in a manual. It comes with a mother. And sometimes mothers, we're trying to do the best that you can, but, really there's not a whole lot of classes on motherhood other than maybe found within the scriptures. You can go to some self-help bookstores and, at Barnes & Noble, and you might be able to find some books on raising children and things of the nature. But at the end of the day, it rests squarely upon your shoulders as a teacher. So a mother is her child's first teacher in every sense of the word. When you look at this proverb, Proverb 31 and verse 26, there it says, she opens her mouth in wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. A mother is constantly teaching a child about life and what is good in life and what is proper in life. Let me share with you a couple of scriptures that have to do with this idea or the concept of a mother being a teacher. The first one is found over in Proverbs 6 and verse 20 through 23. Proverbs 6, verse 20 through 23. Listen to what it says. My son, observe the commandments of your father, and do not forsake the teaching of your mother. Bind them continually on your heart. Tie them around your neck. When you walk about, they will guide you. When you sleep, they will watch over you. And when you awake, they will talk to you. For the commandment is a lamp, and a teaching is a light, and reproof for discipline are the way of life. And so the writer of Proverbs here, he says, follow the commandments of your father, but listen to the teachings of your mother, because there's a lot of wisdom that comes from her. In the New Testament, over in 2 Timothy, the first chapter and verse 5, there Paul writes to Timothy these words about Timothy's parents, or his mother and his grandmother. He said these, for I am mindful of the sincere faith within you, which first dwelt in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am sure that it is in you as well. It was from his grandmother that he got great teaching. It was from his mother that he got the first rudiments of his teaching. Most believe that Timothy's father was not a Christian, but his grandmother and his mother was, and from them he received their teachings from them. 2 Timothy 3, verses 14 and 15 says, you, however, speaking to Timothy, continue in the things that you have learned and have become convinced of, knowing from whom you have learned them, and that from childhood you know the sacred writings, which are able to give you the wisdom that leads to salvation through faith which is in Christ Jesus. Well, where did that come from, Timothy? Well, it came from your grandmother. Where did it come from, Timothy? It came from your mother. They were your first teachers. They taught you the writings. That should encourage you as mothers to be those who are constantly teaching your children. You need to have them here at Bible class. You need to have them here at worship service. You need to be taking time to read to your children from the scriptures. You need to be reading to them Bible stories. You need to be sharing things with them that will strengthen them and encourage them so that as they grow up, they become great citizens, and not just that, but great Christians who are in the service of the Lord. And it all begins from you as a mother being a great teacher that you are supposed to be. A mother not only teaches, but just in word and by looking at the scripture, but a mother teaches by example. Her example is so important. Children are constantly watching their mothers to see how they act or react to things. I'm talking about little boys and little girls. They're constantly watching those kinds of things. The writer of Proverbs says this, her children rise and call her blessed. There's a reason for that. Not only is she a great teacher, not only is she one that provides for their every need, she's one who's lived to be a great example before them. Thomas Edison, a great inventor, he once said these words about his mother. I did not have my mother long, but she cast over me an influence which has lasted all my life. The good effects of her early training I can never lose. If it had not been for her appreciation and her faith in me at a critical time in my experience, I should never have likely have become an inventor. I was always a careless boy, and with my mother of a different mental caliber, I should have turned out badly. But her firmness, her sweetness, her goodness were potent powers to keep me in the right path. My mother was the making of me. The memory of her will always be a blessing to me. What a great blessing. No wonder he rises up and he calls her blessed. That she is someone that is special. An author was writing the memoirs of Winston Churchill. And as he was going down through his biography and so forth, he was naming off all of Churchill's teachers. And he sent them to Churchill for approval, and Churchill sent it back to him and says, you've omitted the very most important teacher of all, my mother. Make sure you get her in there. It's so important when you think about mothers. Now, when it comes down to mothers, and my mother, for instance, you know, I can't be honest, I can't remember all the things my mom taught me. I just know she taught me a lot of things. Some of them she taught me by giving me attitude adjustments as she applied, the adjustment to the lower part of my torso and so forth. And she did it because of maybe something that I said, or maybe it was something that I did, but she corrected me. And she didn't do it because she was bigger than me. She didn't do it because she wanted to hurt me. She did it because she loved me. And they were always followed up with things that she said. It wasn't just the discipline, but it's the words that followed up the discipline that meant so much to me. It was my mother who first predicted that I'd be a preacher. We were not a church-going family. I never walked into a church building until I was 18 years old. We were not a church-going family, but my mother once said to me, that boy will one day be a preacher. I think she was talking about the fact that I had a loud mouth. But it was something like that. Or a lawyer. It turned out to be a preacher. Mothers do so much. Mothers are those who set great examples for us. Let me ask you as children, adults as well as those who are younger, are you doing this? Are you praising your parent? Are you telling them how much you love them and how much you appreciate all the sacrifice and all the work that they have done? And how about you husbands? Are you husbands, do you praise the mother of your children? Your children are who they are, in part not because of all that you have done as a father, but to a large part and to a large degree what their mother has done for them. Husbands ought to be praising our mothers and letting them know how much we appreciate all the things that they do. A mother instills within her children proper priorities. She has down Matthew the 6th chapter and verse 33 where Jesus said, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness. The things that matter most must never be at the mercy of the things that matter the least. And so it's real easy to get caught up in soccer games. It's easy to get caught up with football games and with baseball games and all that kind of thing, and entertainment and camping and so forth. But the most important thing that you can give to your child is to set proper priorities. And the proper priority for your child, first and foremost, should always be God in their life. Teach them about Jesus when they are little. Teach them to fall in love with Jesus, and they'll love Him when they become adults. I mean, think about it. What does it profit if, after you raise your children, they have successful jobs and make lots of money, they drive fine cars, and they live in the nicest neighborhood, but they don't know God? What does it profit for them to gain all the world and lose their own souls? And so one of the first priorities for you as a parent or as a mother is that you set the priorities for your children, and you instill the priorities in your children by you having the right kind of priorities in your life as well. Here's the third reason that I think that the mother's road is so invaluable, and that is a mother's love is invaluable. The writer of Proverbs says this: her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. That's what the writer says there. And so when he looks at his wife, he sees a wife that is an incredible woman. A husband that has confidence in his wife is able to help her and encourage her to do incredible things with her life, and to do everything that she would have him to do as a helpmeet and as a lover and as a mother of his children. If a husband has full confidence in his wife, then you know that she is a woman who really loves her man. There's an epitaph that was put on a gravestone, and the epitaph was by her husband who had survived her 60 years of marriage, and here's what he wrote on it: she always made home happy. I like that. She always made home happy, a happy place to be. That really is love that she gave to him. The grandmother was putting her grandchild to bed upstairs, and the little girl says to her grandmother, she says, Mommy and Daddy, they're entertaining some really important people downstairs this evening. And the grandmother says, yes, I know. But how did you know that? And the little girl said, listen, Mommy is laughing at every one of Daddy's jokes. That is, when I read it, I thought, man, because I tell lots of jokes around my family, and Lori, my wife, she always laughs at my jokes. And my daughters used to sit at the dinner table or in the living room, and they'd say, Mom, why did you laugh at that? That wasn't even funny. All you're doing is encouraging him. But she just has good taste in jokes and so forth, is all this. And wives are like that. And so, a mother makes her home a happy place to be. Think about the words of the proverb: a cheerful heart is good medicine. Our homes need good medicine. They need to be happy and cheerful places for our children to be raised in. A mother is lovingly unselfish. A little boy was in his math class, and they were working on his fractions and so forth. And so the teacher says to the little boy, she says to him, listen, she goes, your mother has made a cherry pie. And there are 7 of you that are seated at the table. There is the mom and the dad, and there are 5 children. So what portion of the pie do you get? And the little boy says, a 1/6. She goes, no, that's not quite right. There are 7 people at the table. There is mom and dad and 5 children. How much of the pie do you get in portion? He said, a 1/6. She says, you do not understand your fractions, do you? I think his name was James. And he says, yes, ma'am, I know my fractions, but I know my mother better, and she would say that she didn't want a piece of pie. Mothers sacrifice. Mothers are so unselfish. They give of themselves over and over and over again. They give of themselves in time. They give of themselves in emotion. They give of themselves in energy. They give of themselves in money. They give of themselves in every way that is imaginable. And that's why a mother's love is the closest example that we have to what God's love is about. It goes through the valley of the shadow of death in order to bring you life. Do you know that 1 out of, I think, every 10,000 can go through some serious difficulties when it comes to having children? There is a risk that your mother took when she bore you as her child. It is love that sacrifices over and over again and would dare even to lay down its life for its offspring. A mother will die for her child. A mother's love. Back during the Second World War, you all have heard of the Holocaust. During the Holocaust, millions and millions and millions of people perished and died. There's a family, it's a true story, there's a family by the name of Solomon Rosenberg, the Rosenbergs. The Rosenbergs were arrested by the Nazis and were put into a concentration camp. It was a labor camp. The rules of the labor camp were really simple rules. The rules were this: if you're strong enough to work, then you'll be permitted to live. If you're too weak to do your work, then you'll be exterminated. Rosenberg and his family went into the concentration camp with his family, he and his wife, his 2 sons, Joshua and David, and his mother and his father. Rosenberg, or Solomon, watched his mother and father be marched off to death because they could not do the work. He knew that David would probably be next. David had always been a very frail child and a weak child, and so he figured that soon they would be coming for him. Each morning, Solomon and his family would get up and they would go to the labor and the work that the Nazis had for them. Each evening, Solomon would come home, dead tired on his feet, walk into the building, and as he'd walk into the building, he'd always search out for familiar faces. He was looking for his family. He was looking for his wife and his sons. One particular day, he walked into the barracks. He's looking for the familiar faces, but the familiar faces were not there. He looked around for a while. He can't find his wife. He can't find his children. Finally, he found Joshua. Joshua's huddled in a corner. He's crying. He's trembling, maybe even praying. And Solomon said to Joshua, "Joshua, where's David?" And he says, "Oh, Papa, David couldn't do the work this morning." And they came for him. "Joshua, where's your mother?" He goes, "Papa, when they came for David, David began to cry and he was so frightened. And mother got up and she said to him, 'David, don't be afraid.' And she took his hand and she went with him." That's a mother's love. I think that's what all mothers have within them, the willingness to give of their very being in order that they can comfort their child, whether it is in life or in death. That's what a mother does, and that's why it's called the mother lode. The mother lode is a road that is, or a mother's road is a road that is so valuable. It's valuable because of the work that you mothers do. It's valuable because of the teaching that you give to your children that would not happen without you doing that for them. And it's valuable because there's no love like a mother's love. It's the mother road. And many of you are traveling it, and I'm so appreciative of the way you go about doing it so heroically in such wonderful and loving kinds of ways. some final thoughts. This morning, God is extending his loving invitation to you, much like a mother invites her children to come in when it's time to come in for the evening and so forth. God does the same thing. He calls too. He's calling to you. I don't know how frightened you are or where you are in your life. Maybe you're like David and you're frightened and you need someone to take your hand and to be with you. God promises to do that. God will always be with you through thick and thin, even to death itself. This morning, if you have a need that's on your heart and you want to respond to the gospel, then we're inviting you to come while together we stand and sing and give you that opportunity. Won't you come?
Sing to me of heaven, sing that song of peace. From the toils that bind me, it will bring release. Burdens will be lifted that are pressing.